It was supposed to be a quiet evening for Amy, Mark, Jessica and Leo. The four friends had known each other since childhood, and tonight they decided to drive out to Finger Hill, a place they'd heard ghost stories about for years. They had laughed about it earlier, but the deeper they drove into the misty woods, the quieter they got. The trees seemed to lean in, casting long shadows under the moonlight, and the air was thick and cold. As they neared the top of the hill, something darted across the road, quick as a flash. Mark swerved to avoid it, and the car skidded out of control, crashing into a tree. Everyone was stunned but unharmed, or so they thought. That's when they noticed it, a strong, sweet smell of lilies filling the car, although no flowers were anywhere nearby. "Do you guys smell that?" Amy asked, rubbing her arms as if trying to shake off a chill. The others nodded, uneasy. They stumbled out of the car to inspect the damage. As they stood there in the dark, the smell of lilies grew stronger, almost overpowering. Then they heard a whisper, faint at first, coming from somewhere in the trees. The voice was hoarse, almost like someone struggling to breathe. "Return or be marked." The friends froze. What was that? Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. Mark tried to laugh it off. "Maybe it's just the wind, or maybe it's this place playing tricks on us." But the whisper grew louder, more desperate. And then, in the corner of their eyes, they saw her, a woman standing by the edge of the trees, barely visible. She was dressed in a tattered white gown, her skin ghostly pale, and her hands clutching a bouquet of lilies. "Leave, before it's too late," she whispered. Amy turned to run, but just as she did, she felt something cold wrap around her wrist. It was a lily vine, sprouting from nowhere, winding tightly, squeezing her skin until it was white and bloodless. "Help!" she screamed, but as her friends ran to pull the vine off, they found it tightening around her wrist, almost as if it was alive. Mark grabbed a knife from his pocket and sliced through the vine, freeing Amy. But as the vine fell to the ground, the woman by the trees smiled, a slow, knowing grin. "You cut my gift," she hissed. "Now you're all marked." Without another word, the woman faded into the dark woods, leaving only the overpowering smell of lilies behind. Shaken, they decided to leave. But as they drove down the hill, the scent of lilies grew stronger, filling the car until they felt like they were suffocating. They each went home that night, but none of them could sleep. That smell followed them, creeping into their bedrooms, into their dreams. In the days that followed, they began seeing lilies everywhere, in their beds, in their kitchens, even blooming out of their walls. And each time they touched a petal, they felt a cold, creeping sensation under their skin. Then came the visions. Each of them started seeing the woman in the white gown, appearing in mirrors, in windows, even in the reflection of their own eyes. Her whispers grew louder, more desperate, and her words chilled them to the bone. "Your lives are mine. One by one I'll claim you." The first to disappear was Jessica. Her family reported her missing after she failed to return from a late-night walk. No trace was found, except a single white lily lying on her bed. Then it was Leo. He left his house one evening saying he needed fresh air, but he never came back. His family searched, but all they found was a lily at the front door, its petals stained red as though with blood. Panic took hold of Amy and Mark. They stayed indoors, boarded up their windows and tried to block out the scent of lilies that filled every room. But no matter what they did, they couldn't escape the smell. They were marked. One night, Amy woke up to find her room filled with flowers. The bed covered in white lilies, each petal dripping with a dark, oily substance that smelled sickly sweet. She tried to scream, but the flowers seemed to crawl toward her, twisting around her neck, covering her mouth, smothering her. Mark was the last one left. Terrified and desperate, he went back to Finger Hill, hoping to beg the woman to lift the curse. He called out into the woods, "Please leave me alone. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to disturb you." But only silence answered. As he turned to leave, he saw her standing in front of him, her face a twisted, hollow grin, her hands clutching a bouquet of withered lilies. "You're mine now," she whispered, her voice like dry leaves rustling in the wind. Mark tried to run, but his feet wouldn't move. The ground seemed to open up beneath him, roots and vines wrapping around his legs, pulling him down. He clawed at the earth, trying to escape, but the last thing he saw was her cold, smiling face as he was dragged down into the dark. Days later, people noticed strange things near Finger Hill. A smell of lilies filled the air, as if the flowers themselves were blooming out of nowhere. And sometimes at dusk, they say you can see 4 pale figures among the trees, standing with blank, hollow eyes, clutching bouquets of rotting lilies. Their mouths move as though crying out for help, but there is only silence, and soon the lilies will bloom again.